Thank you, Acting President. I rise to make my speech on the Education and Training Reform Amendment Regulation of Student Accommodation Bill 2020. Darren Hinch's party is of course supportive of this bill, and I must say it's certainly something that is close to my heart. The reason being is that this bill provides an opportunity to give a voice to children, and we all know that sometimes children don't use that voice, and as Mr Jepp alluded to before, that from the cohort that actually attend these boarding schools, there was a high percentage who had reported abuse, and that's the ones that were actually brave enough to report. I'm not going to go over all of my speech because a lot of what the content that's in here has actually already been discussed. But what I would like to say is I'd like to reiterate the point that Mr Jepp made of the bipartisan approach and the speeches that have been so eloquently done today in this chamber, and I too stand here very proudly to take part in not only listening to those speeches, but to be a part of commending this bill as a party. Now, we know that the legislation was born from the recommendations of the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sex Abuse. That recommendation, 13.3, was aimed at reducing the sexual abuse of children in boarding schools. Accordingly, both that recommendation and the bill most certainly have our full endorsement. As many of the other MLAs and MLCs have already pointed out in their contributions, it's very directly focused on the need to improve the protection of children in boarding houses by ensuring that those facilities are more effectively registered and regulated. And this has certainly been a long-awaited change. As was observed in the final report of the Royal Commission, a particularly high cumulative risk of child sexual abuse is usually, and sadly, inherent to a boarding school environment. The Commission has found that this is because it presents significant opportunities for perpetrators to be alone with children. Perpetrators thrive on the availability of children at their immediate disposal. The children are at the full beck and call of the demands, instructions and authorities of the adults there. There is often little independent oversight of the day-to-day running or events at the boarding house. There are usually few obvious alternative adults to whom the resident children can immediately disclose abuse to, or from whom they can seek protection. No matter whether it be a public or a private school, it is critically important that any school in Victoria fastidiously complies with basic child safe standards and does everything within its power to prevent the sexual abuse of all of their students. In my view, the changes being enshrined through this bill provide very important new protections in that context. I still, however, find it extremely sad and disturbing that we even require this legislation. I still find it extremely disturbing that we still have people sexually abusing children, taking advantage of children and taking advantage of vulnerable children. And I hope that one day that abhorrent abuse will be never seen again. It will be ruled out and people will be held accountable, which will reduce the offending. And I hope that one day we have a generation of people who see it for the sickening, vile act that it is absolutely no longer existent within our communities. I would also take this opportunity to point out that Derryn Hinch's Justice Party has maintained a very close and active interest in the development and rollout of the National Redress Scheme, not only through Derryn's involvement during his term in the Senate as the chair of the Joint Select Committee, but also my own work in meeting with survivors and with the officers of the Victorian Attorney General and the Federal Families and Social Services Minister on an ongoing basis about the progression and implementation of the scheme. There is still so much work to be done in regards to the NRS. However, I digress there and will continue to address the bill that is before us. I'm always acutely aware of the levels of accountability and responsibility that should be borne by every organisation in making sure that such heinous offending never occurs under their watch. Naturally, schools, and even more specifically boarding schools, are an integral part of that. I would like to commend all the other speakers who have, as I said, delivered some incredible speeches today, and I would like to also reflect on something that Dr. Bark and Mr. Rich Phillips talked about. And that is the need for the cultural and systemic changes, not only within boarding houses and schools, but right across organisations. This cannot be a siloed approach to only boarding schools. We have to ensure that there are systemic changes to DHHS, to other support systems, to ensure that not only teachers feel comfortable in reporting, but that children feel comfortable going to teachers to declare that abuse so that they know they can enshrine their trust in that teacher and know that that teacher will do the right thing by them. On that note, I thank the Education Minister and the Government for introducing this bill, and I confirm that it has my full support.
Thank you, Ms.